Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna start a new series. What if Deku built a Iron Man suit? Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
He was quirkless. Due of something. He had no idea what it was. The doctor clarified it to his mother, but he used words Izuku would not grasp at his age. Besides, he paid more attention to his crushing sensation. His dreams, his ambition, disappeared from his reach. All for he lacked what most of society owned. He cannot be a hero without a flaw. Kachan said. The doctor said it, his mother said it. Not directly, but he worked it out when she hugged him tightly and kept crying apologies all the time. Trying to clear all those ideas, Izuku shook his head. His mother accompanied him to this store so he might get some fresh hero comics and make him happy. He still loved them, the colors, the action, even if he still struggled to read and didn't understand a larger portion of the words used in them without context. Heroes defeating enemies and rescuing people. Izuku really found himself enmeshed in the comic book universe. He looked at the books kept on the shelves. Their covers showed All Might, most of them had. That did not surprise Izuku. All Might was #1 hero in Japan and America after all. Though most of them were fictional, people eager to see his exploits were simply natural. Everyone had fun with them anyway. Normally Izuku would grab one of them without thinking twice for his already sizable collection, but these were not normal conditions. All Might stood for everything Izuku could never dream of archiving. True hero with a lovely smile and a strong quirk was All Might. And Izuku was unable even to get a chance to pursue becoming one. He sighed silently, dropped his head low, then left the shelf. He wandered for some time staring at the floor, then his eyes shot upward. Izuku slanted his head to one side. Though this comics were different, he was still in the hero side of the comic section. Though still rather flashy, lines were more sharp to them and colors more toned. The most crucial point, though, was that Izuku identified none of the heroes present. A fact that would be simply groundbreaking for a devoted hero fan. Based on more than 20 years before him, he reasoned that might be some elderly heroes. One man had a hammer, a red cape, some sort of armor with lighting all around him. Then a massive, green human was shattering through a wall. His muscles rivaled those of All Might. Then there was a man in blue costume jumping through the air with a fierce look and explosions in the background. He had a shield. And subsequently a type of flying robot. But the robot resembled a human. None of those rung any bells in Izuku's head, and as a devoted hero fan he couldn't let that kind of dishonesty to show on him. Inspired and resolved, he grabbed one of those with the humanoid robot. He first observed that the paper felt rather old and the comics were rather dusty. Ignoring it for now, he began to turn pages. Imagine his surprise when he discovered it was a suit of some sort the main character created for himself to fight crime. Not a robot. Before Izuku knew it had read 4 of those comics. Izuku, honey, what are you looking at? From his presentation, his mother's voice brought him back. From the page he was reading, Izuku turned to see his mother crouched next to him staring at comics strewn all around the floor. He said, showing her the cover, I found this. It's Iron Man. He felt his tongue twist at that and most certainly messed it off based on his mother's little laugh. English words proved difficult to pronounce. I believe it says, Iron Man, Izuku, she said, gently guiding him with correct pronunciation. It most likely means man produced out of iron. Oh. That makes sense, he remarked glancing at the cover. Man created of iron. Iron Man. The man battling the crime in metal suit. Most likely he moved about with some sort of strength-type quirk enabled. Again, though, he could fly, launch some laser beams from his chest and palms, and then his suit contained weapons including rockets. Many oddities. Although that sounded like a workable answer. Wow kid, you've got some brain there, came the voice with an odd accent behind him. Izuku blushed and jumped just slightly, he was murmuring, once again. Overcoming his humiliation, he turned to check his shoulder and saw a rather elderly man with glasses grinning at him with slicked back gray hair. Perhaps American. He was not Japanese. Most certainly an employee. He wore a shirt bearing the store logo. The man glanced at Izuku, then at comics spread out on the ground. Nice taste, kid, none really reads those anymore. Izuku pointed up his eyebrows at that. Why? This are good. I really loved them. The man grinned even more, laughed slightly. Izuku gasped as the staff member said, those are pre-quirks comics, kid. They're like over 200 years old. Only guys working here read them. Well, some of them, myself included. He said, gesturing at the comic Izuku. The man asked, I like that series in particular. Do you want me to tell you more about it? Izuku found himself nodding his head rather vigorously, making the man chuckle once more. It's about a smart inventor, millionaire who decided to save people by using a super tech suit of his making after suffering a terrible accident. Izuku mumbled under his nose, stroking his chin, and evaluating the prospects of such a hero to exist in his era. Smart. He must be super smart to build that thing. Most likely he has some kind of intelligence quirk. No wait, it's a pre-quirk comic, so maybe some kind of power that makes him really, really smart. Izuku said under his nose. Just to be disturbed by the man laughing conspicuously. You really have a brilliant mind and colorful imagination, don't you, kid? He remarked, making Izuku flush once more and his mother laugh. Looking into Izuku's eyes, sorry to burst your bubble, but it's not that. The man said. What? Izuku asked, unable control. What would happen if the man wearing the suit lacked certain kind of brain power or multiple eccentricities? Man gently said, he's just really smart. He's got a big brain filled with knowledge and ideas. That's it, kid. No quirks, no brain enchanting ability. It's just him. Izuku blinked at that, his brain stutter stopping suddenly. He wanted but had it spelled to him. No, he had to get confirmation. For his own advantage. His voice hardly audible, he said, so, he's quirkless? Man turned to blink at that. Using our age terminology, well, he's quirkless. From the man to the cover of the comic, Izuku moved his eyes to show the main hero in his suit, helmet under his armpit, soft smile and forward glance. Focusing on Izuku. Warmth flooded his chest. He was also aware of what it was. He had that same feeling every time he heard or watched All Might. That told him everything was going to be fine now felt right. Here is, he. That his hero is here looking out over him. Keeping him secure. Encouraging him. Izuku ran his hand over his eyes, sniffed and felt them moist. Though his voice was merely a soft whisper, Izuku said, Hey mom. Knowing he had his mother's attention. Can we get this once? His mother answered, hugging him gently and kissing the top of his head, of course, sweetie. And do we have a book at home explaining words? Curious of her baby boy motives, a dictionary. Yes, we do. Why? She asked. I want to read and understand the words in them. Izuku said as he stood up and had the ghost of a smile gracing his lips. If you want to read them, better start at the beginning. The man remarked, glancing at Izuku and flashing friendly smile. I can get you those, youngster. They have to be somewhere at the rear. Yes, I would like that, mister. Izuku said, tilting his head. Lee. Stan Lee, youngster. Gimme a few moments. Izuku nodded just to watch the man search for the comics. He might not have a quirk. Perhaps right now his dream is buried in the muck. Still, his soul is not damaged. And Izuku would be damned if he quits without struggle. Should he lack personal power, he will just grow to have it. Constructing it from bottom up. Izuku totally ignored the disturbance in his classroom and fixed his eyes on the page he was reading. Once more, he wished his peers would be more thoughtful and maintain all the noise an octave or two below. Not that they're bugging him in any particular manner. Izuku simply wanted to go deaf early in his life. He inhabited his own small universe. They lived in theirs. Of course, he wasn't a complete douche. That role belonged to the very angry Pomeranian, with his constant scowl and few sits in front of him. He might have been born this way. Though he tried to pay attention to everything around him, he only noticed the salient features. Like how their homeroom teacher arrived with a stack of papers, began talking about choosing their life paths, only to toss all those rather nicely sorted for him, which in turn made his classmates cheer and start using their quirks. Surely they knew that was against the law. Then he heard someone screaming about his destined road to glory while something burst and smelled caramel all around. Just for his teacher to say something that sent the classroom into terrible silence before laughter erupted. Izuku heard his surname somewhere along that somewhat irritating sound but decided to ignore it. He knew he would have to go back later to review it and note some things at home. The part he was reading now seemed rather complex. He truly wanted not to make a mistake and miscalculation during the planning stage. But his lecture was cut short by the very loud and disruptive scream that sounded oddly like Deku, and non-stop popping. Izuku sloppily raised his eyes from the pages just in time to see Bakugo poised to swing his arm at his desk, animalistic scowl and small red eyes pointed at him. He was about to sigh. Izuku put together the most likely sequence of events that resulted in this sad outcome in a flash. Weighing his options and considering that the principal had all desks replaced last week, he decided to act. Support course, Izuku said in the most apathetic manner he could manage, not too difficult, still, it worked. Bakugo stopped mid-swing. His explosions vanished entirely after a second, but the scowl and red stare piercing right through Izuku persisted. At last he was getting to some fascinating sections, but he knew that leaving his eyes out of the blonde form would cause combusted sweat to land squarely on his face. He liked his face as it was. Excuse him. He thus kept searching, not in the eyes, not in the eyes, not in the eyes. God forbid Bakugo should believe he is challenging him or anything. Most likely the safest spot to look, he fixed his eyes on his chin. Bakugo nothing but growled at him. What did you say, you damned nerd? UA's support course. That's where I'm going. Izuku said, short and simple. He really wanted to go back to reading. Bakugo huffed, shoving his hands into his pockets and somehow calmed down, but the frown stayed. Was it fixed by now permanently? Good. Keep it that way, Deku. Remember that it was me who aced the UA mock test. Go with the other extras. At least they could use your shitty nerd brain for something useful. Bakugo said with his austere voice slanted with satisfaction of putting the shitty nerd where he belonged. Izuku just nodded to him and watched him go. He wanted to fix his nasty ex-best friend, #1 bully. Bakugo failed the mock exam. Though he was still 5% shy from Izuku, he did rather well, scoring 95%, which was quite high. Thank God his teacher overlooked his mark. Saying that to Firecracker's face would be equivalent to unpleasant heat and shockwave right into his nose and some other roughing, Izuku made wise decisions about life. Midoriya. Arrived his teacher in a drowsy voice. What are you reading, again? Izuku barely looked at the man. His eyes were focused on picking up where he stopped reading. By now, he knew his teacher was trying to get him into trouble for what seemed to be the 1000th time. The man could not stand the knowledge that someone far smarter than him existed. Izuku just corrected him once 2 years ago. Electrodynamics and energy conversion. College-level stuff. Izuku responded as modestly and civilly as he could. Why were people unable to simply let him be with his books alone? Perhaps he should schedule that early test. He would have much more time to learn some more martial arts, get money from his job, or read. Not to mention the peace and quiet he would find. His social life was non-existent anyhow. Izuku turned off all around him, concentrating only on his reading. He could just read and make mental notes now that the unwelcome disturbance was cleared from the path. This was his last period, if he remembered well enough. This meant he was free roughly in 30 minutes, allow either 30 minutes or less. Good, he worked on training today. Izuku left the school grounds, slowly headed for the gym. Having some time to kill, he decided that veering off the main road and towards the river bank would help him. He read some more and wanted some silence. The cunning bell had rung exactly in the middle of a crucial clarification. Deciding not to cross the underbridge passage, he settled on sitting on the grass nearby. His mother claimed he was too white and that he could use some sun, vitamins, and other stuff. Mom used to joke that he resembled a paper sheet in color. He wasn't excused, though. He compared it and came a few shades away from it. Just about opening his bag, Izuku heard some strange noise coming from the corridor. Inspired, he rose up and investigated it, much as jelly desserts create when you blow air into them using a straw. He came upon some sort of grayish-green sludge with mouth and eerie eyes. The jelly monster ranted about needing to hide since he was being pursued by some huge, blonde buffoon. Izuku stood next to the door, hiding behind the wall, knowing he wanted not to deal with it. A few moments later he felt the tremendous wind pressure rushing past him and heard a famous and somewhat obtrusive voice. A call of the super move like the one in games. Izuku's thoughts registered that he understood voice. He was rather good at knowing. Glancing around, he noticed an unusually tall, buff man with blonde hair with two bangs standing up like a V, sporting green cargo pants and a basic, white t-shirt and carrying a grocery bag. Yes, suspicions validated. He's number 3 favorite hero. It was All Might. Green goo was in front of him on the walkway and walls. Piecing together what happened, Izuku found himself saying, "Wow." Hearing him, All Might turned to him somewhat startled. The two watched one another for a few seconds before. "Do not worry, citizen. The danger have passed." "Why?" "Because I'm here." All Might all but yelled, ending it with his legendary laugh. "I wasn't worried," Izuku said dismissively, shrugging a little. He said straightforwardly, "And could you keep your voice down? I've just left the school and there is plenty of obnoxious loudness there." He wanted neither damaged hearing nor a headache. "Oh, of course. Sorry." All Might answered him somehow bashfully with obvious guilt. Pointing to the entire passage behind Giant's back, Izuku asked, "Do you need a hand with picking it up? We could make use of those your bottles of?" Blinking at him, All Might paused to consider his words. Most likely rebooting his brain, he responded, "No need, young man. I have it covered," gesturing in front of him. "Nah, I have time and I'm always happy to help," Izuku said, a little smile on his lips. All Might looked like he wanted to deny him yet again, but Izuku already made his way past him and started gathering gross to touch sludge into a more reasonable pile. Working silently, the two gently squeeze horrible slime into plastic containers. Izuku felt he should tell All Might something since he almost finished his work and secured the most crucial parts, eyes and mouth. "You know, I'm quirkless," he began, throwing the rhetorical bomb at the hero, stopping him to glance at Izuku with surprise clearly on his face. He flushed a little smile at All Might but didn't stop his hands from working. "All my life I was laughing stock for everyone around me. Especially considering that I want to become hero in the future. Thanks to you, I may add. I was, and still am, bullied for a genetic defect. The day I was told by the doctor that I lack any kind of power like everyone around me was crushing. I stopped for a second, lost in my memories and feelings." He paused briefly, "But it didn't stop me. I still want to become hero. Still want to help people. And maybe I won't be the number 1 like you, but it matters not to me. It's all for the public and media anyway. I aim to become a symbol, just like you. Although symbol of peace may be out of reach, I don't think I'll ever have power to be that. Maybe a symbol of hope or something like that." Izuku finished both his monologue and gathering the pile of disgusting goo. Getting all out of his chest to the man who motivated him to choose his life path, he felt somehow lighter. Rising straight, Izuku straightened his back and gave All Might a big smile along with a bottle. All Might gave his declaration some time to process. His face changed from surprise to faint shock and last to appreciation. Appreciability, though Izuku wasn't sure. The giant smile and full belly calmed him down. His laugh was friendly. "Young man, those words you've just said moved me deeply. I admire your determination and your dream. I'm going to be honest with you. I wanted to stop you there. But I know my words would just dump down your spirit, nothing else. Let me warn you though, the path to heroics isn't padded with roses, and hero life is a dangerous one. Trust me on that." His voice turned very serious at the end. Certainly some sort of personal knowledge. "But seeing the look in your eyes and hearing the drive in your voice, allow me to say those words to you. You, young man, can become a hero. A fantastic one at that, no doubt. So carry on with your dreams and change them into reality." All Might finished with a thumbs up. Though unable to help, Izuku grinned broadly at that. Most likely from the tears threatening to fall from his eyes, he felt a slight itching there. Stupid Midoriya waterworks. He rubbed them quickly against his sleeve and turned to face the hero. "Thanks. That means a lot to me." He glanced at the bottles pushed into All Might's side pockets. Those 2 containers were sure to fall out given All Might's most used mode of transportation was actually jumping into the heavens. Already searching for said item. "Give me a moment, All Might. We can secure the bottles with duct tape in my backpack. Better be safe than sorry," he said. "Good thinking, young man. And while we're at it, would you wish an autograph?" Izuku answered the inquiry with blinks. Did he seek one? Indeed, extremely. Being a devoted hero fan, he constantly yearned to be one. And sure, he would frame it in his room with all mights. On what platform should he have written it? Not very precisely. Only books he was reading at school were in his rucksack. Some basic items. And his inventions to create for the future volume 13-year notebook. He was considering using the notebook while taping bottles tight. He would treat it as a sort of gift. Sure, that sounds excellent. Izuku turned around and picked up his pace from leisure walk to march, barely containing his excitement after getting All Might's signature, telling him his name, and watched the hero soar into the great heavens. He wanted not to miss his training by late arrival. Izuku pulled a basic black earpiece and put it on. "Alan, please tell me that we have that recorded," he asked, grinning ear to ear. Though he didn't mind, his cheeks hurt. "Of course, sir," said a computer voice in the earpiece. "I already cut it and saved under a very appropriate name. Oh my god, it is All Might, and I'm trying very hard to not fanboygasm right into his face." "Alan," Izuku began, his smile now strained. "I really, quite hate you sometimes, you know." "I'm doing my very best, sir." Nezu kept looking about the observation room. Gradually filling it, teachers lounged in padded armchairs. Midnight and Mike were chatting rather loudly as usual. 13 and Ectoplasm cutting in from time to time. Snipe, Vlad King and Cementos struck small talk. All Might watched candidates getting ready for the practical portion of the hero course exam in his little, withered form. He could count on Yagi already searching for a suitable successor. Eraserhead seemed to doze off, standing in the corner with his back against the wall and closed eyes. Well, Nezu knew that Aizawa would be quite exact in observing children struggle, and finally. "Majima-san, did something happen?" Nezu asked helplessly. Ever since the last week's support course exam, Nezu struggled to put his paw on it. From being quite happy and a little drunk, Majima was descending into total desperation and Aizawa's dead inside state. He even caught him grabbing some of Vlad's secret vodka supply. Power Loader turned toward Nezu and folded his arms on his naked chest. "It's just that I'm going to have two very unique students," he said, sighing heavily at last. Nezu drew in closer, head on his paws, little smile dancing on his lips. "Going to? We still haven't gone for support candidates' scores." Barked a laugh and shook his head. "Power Loader, oh trust me on this, boss. Those two already attend our university. Looking at their marks is just a formality." Nezu's smile at that was natural. "So where does your problem lie?" "One of them is definitely going to be a death of me," Majima said in so familiar Aizawa deadpan tone. "And the other one? He's a genius. I had to ask him during the interview to explain some things to me, since last time I heard them was in college." Power Loader laughed a little. "You are going to enjoy him." Nezu turned to show great smiles at that. Anxiety bubbling in his chest. Perhaps he will visit or two in support's studio. "But I'm fighting with my ideas," Majima said, rubbing his chin. Nezu just nodded his head to go on. "I'm sure that if those two click together they'll push each other into greater highs." He stopped momentarily to shiver somewhat. "But I also worry that they could do something that would most likely lead to our early death." Nezu burst out laughing at that. Now he was certain he would drop into studio to see those two. Nezu said, "I can't wait and see what their inventions are." He turned back to view screens. Time to start was almost here. Silence was used by Power Loader. "Oh, you're about to see one in the exam," he said, drawing Nezu's attention once more, this time with perplexing expression. "Let's just say that I've taken a bit of liberty and added something that Genius Boy made." Ha stopped momentarily. "No spoilers though," he said, glancing at the screens. Nezu fidgeted in his seat, enthusiasm bursting through. Now he was staring at every monitor, looking for hints, wondering what the so very gifted future pupil did. He had to chastise himself almost a dozen times. That riddle Power Loader left him with kept his focus off of hero hopefuls. At first, it was faint, so subtle that he knew he missed it at the beginning, but it grew more and more obvious. Other teachers picking it up, he heard whispers starting to fill the classroom. Questions moving from one to the other. Finally Snipe asked, "Is it me or do those bots seem smarter?" What everyone else's heads held. Nezu looked at Majima to see his shoulders rising with every sound, a big Aizawa-like smile on his face. She heard cackling. "Majima-san, Would you kindly and wisely enlighten us? Power Loader turned to face his colleagues after few long breaths. What you're witnessing, my dear friends, is the work of a support student candidate. He delighted in their startled responses. Even the somewhat austere Aizawa's eyebrow raised. In his head he began to thank Genius Boy. His work was going to make his day. Long story short, Kid not only changed the whole bot operating system. He gave them a new one. He pointed to the screen to show how one pointer avoided a laser beam with movement too complicated and refined for old robots. Not only that, he included a learning program into it. Bots now observe, analyze and develop counter-strategies, and to spice things out, they share information between themselves. Last but not least, should a bot judge that his opponent is too much for it, it calls for help. To sum it up, our bots think just like a normal human being. Saying that teachers were stunned would be a minimization. Almost every jaw hung open. Aizawa's eyebrows seemed to vanish in his hairline, which was enough for Majima as he let his lips stretch into the biggest shit-eating grin he had ever had in his life. He was mailing this child a basket. You're saying that a 14-year-old did that in 3 years? Mike asked, his voice pure bewilderment. Oh no, Power Loader laughed, curled up in his seat. He did it in 2 and in the other hour he vastly improved the bot's power cores. At the interview he said to me, if I had 1 hour more, I'd improve their AI even more, or something like that. The choking noises from some of his friends were music to his ears. Then arrived the 0-pointer, and they saw his pupils transformed into mass of headless chickens. Not caring about others, all of them are fleeing as far as they can. Their own safety first most of all. Sounds of displeasure circled the space. Suddenly screens changed to show a brown-haired girl caught under a massive concrete slab. She tried turning around to touch it, but in vain. The key issues are there were no contenders around her and a massive behemoth rolling toward her. Came the worried call from All Might, Power Loader, stop that robot. No need. Majima responded apathetically, inspecting his nail protectors. Yagi screamed, getting up and steam rising from his body. What? This girl is going to be rolled over. She won't. Power Loader gestured to the screen, slightly smirking. Just shut up and watch. As the massive robot neared where the girl was lying, they all watched in expectation, and it stopped moving entirely. Head whirled, giving it the appearance of lost puppy. Then dropped its arm, sweeping the concrete from the girl just to softly pick her up and walk her off the side of the road. Then it lazily kept after other children, staring at it with her jaw open. Majima said, Kid added extra lines for the 0-pointer. If it can't go around students unable to move out of its way, it helps them. Tested it on myself. Burned the image of his coworkers' slack jaws with Nezu insane laughter in the background into his memory. He was looking forward that brilliant student arriving at the university. Power Loader will gladly accept any consequences should more events of this nature arise. Izuku exhaled steam from his mouth and inhaled slowly cold air. It was quite cold today. He was happy he listened to Mom and picked that horrible yellow scarf. Running his hand against cold stone, he pushed accumulated snow out on the ground. In a somewhat somber voice, Hey, Stan, Izuku said. Since his boss, friend, and grandfather figure passed away, it was closing on a years ago. Izuku hardly remembered crying so much at last. Not even his quirklessness was that difficult for him to manage. He owed that man so much. Together with his mother, he developed into the person he is now. It was Stan who first inspired Izuku to realize comics could come true regardless of how crazy it would seem. Stan was the one who inspired Izuku's insatiable curiosity outside of heroically relevant subjects. Stan will thus always be Izuku's number one, his symbol, as such. I had the support course exam 2 weeks ago. The answer will come by any day now. He stopped, shuffling uneasily. I'm almost sure I got in. You should have seen Power Loader face when I showed him some of my ideas. You would find it absolutely hilarious. Izuku chucked, absolutely bewildering in the hero's face still fresh in his mind. I missed showing him the suit. That's a total secret for now. Only, when I'm in the UA I'll share it with him, and ask for help if necessary. Izuku took deep breath and pursed his lips slightly. Honestly, if they reject the idea, I'm not sure what I would do. He said, clearly terrified. The suit of Iron Man was his only one fix. His only possibility to ever rise as a hero. He recalled when Stan joked around that Izuku would soon be the live Tony Stark. Suit, business, beautiful woman at his side and a lot of people begging for his signature. Izuku did not deny that he almost daily dreamed of it. But he was terrified now since he was so near to bringing those ideas to life. Though he could not help, he considered millions of what-if questions. He reasoned that everyone naturally did. Still, he was terrified absolutely shitless. Of course, if they said no, Izuku would most likely come up with another concept to be a hero. Though it wouldn't be the same, high-tech suit was not his only written down idea. Like he let the stand down, he would feel let down in himself. Just that thought was more terrible to him than any of All Might's punches. Izuku gently followed his fingers over the edge of the gravestone. He sighed loudly and patted the headstone. We shall see what life brings to us, won't we? Stan? I'll swing by another day. Don't go around and cause trouble to others, okay? Izuku left the cemetery somewhat improved. He was neither excellent nor even good. He was just normal, still concerned and under pressure, but somehow it helped him to release some of it from his shoulders. Of course it wasn't as successful as chatting with Stan personally. But he's not one to grumble, it's all he has now. When he got home he noticed right away quite fashionable, well-polished dress shoes perfect for a 4-year-old child in size. From the living room came two voices, one belonging to his mother and other clearly male, although rather high-pitched. Rising from his outside attire, Izuku moved slowly forward to meet unexpected visitor. Mom has not mentioned to him a visit. Izuku wasn't sure there, in front of his mother, a small. He understood that modern humans traded with animals. While drinking tea, this guest looked exactly like some sort of big rodent in a super fancy suit with a long scar over his right eye. While the Hosu police chief had dog head for crying out loud, chatted with his mother, who looked like she had the time of her life. When Izuku walked into the room, the rodent human sent a courteous smile and set aside his cup. If it isn't young Midoriya, he said, getting up and headed toward Izuku. Though he did not even reach Izuku's hips, his presence made young feel that this man was to be revered. He laid out his paw. I could not restrain myself and not pay you a visit, young man. Izuku shook rodent man paw while bending down. Izuku duly noted, his fur was quite soft. Thank you, sir. I'm honored, but I'm afraid I don't know who you are. Guest's smile at that was great. Making some sort of dramatic posture, he said, who am I? Am I a bear? Or a mouse? Or maybe a dog? The answer is, I'm the director of UA High. Izuku was startled. One of the most well-known in the world and the very man in charge of the best hero school in Japan visited his house to discuss. Hello. A geeky, antisocial adolescent. Sudden terror crept down Izuku's spine. Was he in legal hot water? Did something happen during the hero exam, and given his new system, he was accountable? Oh God, kindly inform him that none died. His heart stopped just considering that his creation might be the cause of someone losing their life. Was he scheduled to appear before court? Perhaps directly to prison as well. Was Principal here since he wanted to show them an astonishingly lengthy list of school damage? Tell him, the freaking 0-point behemoth didn't run wild since he messed up somewhere in the code. Principal laughed silently into his paw. Oh my, power loader and your mother weren't joking when they said that you could talk. Izuku felt his face heated as he held his hand over his mouth. Let's sit down and have a small chat. The rodent man turned around and sank himself back on the armchair. Izuku sat next to his mother, who made great effort to suppress her laughter at her son's humiliation. Turning toward Principal, Izuku sent her slightly disgusted and dirty glance and discovered his mouth drier than the desert. Though he wanted to ask questions, no sound came out. He was more than nervous. He was partly yearning to return to the cemetery and lie next to Stan. That would be thousands times better now, considering this. Worry not, young Midoriya. I didn't come here because you're in trouble. Quite on the contrary, Principal said, letting Izuku let out a breath he wasn't aware he was holding. Normally we send out letters and to those who passed holodisks, but there was no way for me to contain my excitement and wait for such a brilliant mind to come in April. I had to meet you, young man. Principal laughed into his paw and took a sip from his cup. I must say you've left quite an impression on me and other teachers, he said, staring directly at Izuku, a little friendly smile gracing his lips. I did? Of course. Due to your AI we had to lower the acceptance score, because almost all candidates had trouble downing villain bots. Allow me to show you something. Principal said, digging into his briefcase, which lay previously next to the armchair. He got a tablet, tapped a few times, then showed Izuku it. He looked at the scene with his mother. Many candidates fleeing massive zero-pointer with terrified looks left behind an injured girl. Izuku felt rage boiling inside his chest. Those were candidates worthy of heroes. When the metal behemoth stopped before the trapped girl, he heard his mother gasp. Fidgety waiting for what was ahead. When zero-pointer helped the girl get out and left her alone, both let out breaths. Good. Izuku didn't unintentionally mess around. Thanks to your program, this girl's health and many others was saved, Principal said, picking a tablet from Izuku. We always had a problem with them and some of the children ended up being injured. The rodent man bowed slightly to Izuku, grinned broadly. Izuku personally experienced all of his past anxiety disappearing. He made a difference for someone. His creation was beneficial. He could accomplish it. He quite had a chance to be a hero. Principal said, I must say, I'm greatly impressed in your programming skills, young Midoriya. And Powerloader told us about your wonderful mind. Allow me to congratulate you, Izuku Midoriya. You are accepted into the UA support department as a member of Class 1H. Principal said, laying the official letter on the table. Izuku's mother gave him a strong hug, and he himself felt a joyful loan tear down his cheek. He succeeded. But I can't help myself, but to ask you, young Midoriya, Principal said, drawing the son-mother pair's attention. Powerloader tried to walk me through your lines of code but found himself unable to explain more than half of your source of skill in question. Izuku answered that, but he stopped himself before any sound came out. Half smiling, he asked his mother silently to let him go. She did it but not before kissing his head. Izuku pulled an earpiece from his pants pocket and showed it to the principal, who examined it curiously and pressed it up against his little ears. Alan, say hello to UA's principal, Izuku said, grinning fully. He liked the way the principal's face changed from pure surprise to exactly matched smile. Izuku thought of it as an unusual start of a great friendship. It was Izuku's alarm going off that woke him up. He moved his arm slowly as he looked for his phone, determined to silence the annoying sound. He couldn't even remember how to set up that song. He decided that he was too tired or lazy to bother with it after a few pats around the usual spot for the device to lie down. He rolled over on his bed and said, Alan, please turn off the alarm. The alarm kept going off after a short time. Alan? Are you there? Izuku asked Alan as he slowly opened his eyes and looked at his desk. Yes, unfortunately I am, sir, was the answer. Monitor lit up, making the hissing Izuku blind. I'm just waiting for you to get your lazy ass up, sir. As Izuku sat back down on the soft mattress, he said, well, I don't wanna. He was up until 3 in the morning. To make certain that everything was ready and working as planned. He also got together all of his almost finished projects to bring to the US, where he planned to use school supplies to finish them all. So do I understand correctly that you want to be late for your first day in UA, sir? Should I call Principal Nezu and relay that message? Izuku almost jumped off his bed and landed funny on the floor. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked as he looked for his underwear on his dresser. I've tried to get you to sleep earlier at least 10 times, sir, and when you finally decided to rest for the night, you just said to set up the alarm for you. So if anything it is your fault, sir. Izuku spoke back. I've got it on the tape. Don't bother arguing with me, sir. Izuku just huffed, feeling a little bad about letting Alan make up its own personality. He shook his head and left to get ready for the day. His first day on the job in the USA high school, that sounds fun. Izuku put on his school uniform and looked at himself in the mirror, then went to the bathroom to finish his morning routine. He thought it was still a dream. Could it be that he was still asleep? If he pinched his cheek and felt pain, then it was real and not a dream. After having breakfast with his mom, he got his backpack and a sport bag full of electronics and left. Mom's voice came from behind and said, Izuku, wait. Izuku turned around and saw her small, thin body melding a little. She had a proud smile on her lips. You look cool, sweetie. Have a good day. Izuku smiled and waved back at her, thanks, Mom. While he was riding the train to school, he could feel people smiling at him. was that the well-known respect for the US and its pupils. When he first started school, everyone looked up to him and thought big things would happen for him. Most likely, they thought he was in hero course. Izuku would be honest if someone asked him about it. We didn't want fake admiration for him. He wanted people to know about the good things he did and the things he came up with. For him, UA's building was as beautiful as always. Since a month ago, he had been coming here to work on a special project with the principal and power loader. That didn't matter. It was now his school. He might have been in bed still. Yet another pinch said different. Alan spoke up and pulled Izuku out of his thoughts. Sir, do you want me to lead you to your classroom? But Izuku said, no, I'm fine. I already remember most of the main campus layout. He then walked onto school grounds. Are you sure? We don't want you to end up in Midnight's arms. Again, do we, sir? Izuku got scared when he thought about this accident. The worst part? He found that he liked it when she petted him. We agreed to never speak of it, Alan. They replied with a cheeky, did we? How are you feeling though, sir? Izuku scratched his head and blinked. Alan could count on him to be a great friend. If only he would stop calling me sir. Izuku said with a small smile. Good. I can't wait for it to start. And you, Alan? Once more, being sarcastic, just like the lines of zeros and ones. Izuku smiled and shook his head. He began to think about his future classmates and remembered one from the test in particular. It was clear she was talented because while everyone else only made 1 or 2 things, she made 5. During this, though, she set off a few explosions and a small fire. She didn't help when she laughed with pride and said it was less than what she usually did. Izuku wished that this mean girl with pink hair wasn't in his class. Shota sipped his coffee slowly from a mug with a cat on it in the teacher's lounge. He had no idea who made it, but damn, it tasted good. Almost enough for him to show some compassion and not make his students suffer. Almost. When he thought of students, a certain one came to mind. Power Loader's smart kid. That kid was smart, but Shota wasn't sure how smart he was. Nezu told him how smart the kid was. Test, that kid was very smart. Shota himself met a boy once, and the way that kid mumbled while telling him all about Eraserhead gave him chills. Then he asked for an autograph and, out of the blue, pulled out a notebook with information about himself and a sketch of him that looked good. Shota didn't know what to do because he had never been asked for a hero's duty before. He finally just shrugged it off and granted the child's wish, which made her smile so big it was blinding. The genius boy then gave him one of his creations, a tiny camera that was great for working underground. The best thing about it? It would be impossible for anyone to see because it looked just like Shota's superhero outfit. Now Shota knew a bad kid when he saw one. You could call it his 7th sense, since the 6th one was for finding fluffy, cute cats. Because he gave off a strange but good vibe, that smart boy was sure to cause trouble. His thoughts were told to Nezu. The cursed animal laughed and told him about the kid's plan for the future, or at least a part of it. When Shota heard it, he wasn't sure if he was amazed or scared. Most likely both. His phone rang, telling him it was time to go meet his new students, or playthings, as Midnight liked to call them. She wasn't totally wrong. He grabbed his favorite yellow sleeping bag and reset his face so that it looked like he was dead inside. Then he made his way to 1A. Momo wasn't sure what she thought about her classmates. She was homeschooled her whole life and didn't have many interactions with other kids her age. The only times she did were at balls and tea parties that her parents went to. It seemed like every girl there was just like her. Prim, quiet, and friendly. The boys, on the other hand. Momo lost track after the 5th time she caught them, secretly, looking at her body. But she knew 2 things for sure. There were no loud blonde with spiked hair and a big ego on her list of possible friends. Neither was the little perverted kid with purple balls on his head. At any time, she didn't want to have anything to do with them. She had already seen the little pervert look at her body 4 times. When their homeroom teacher came in, Momo didn't know what to think again. He looked like he was going to fall over on his next step because of the dark circles under his eyes. His clothes and hair made him look like a person who lived under a bridge. She was taught that making assumptions about people is wrong, but she couldn't help herself this time. They got their PE from Aizawa sensei. He told them to put on their uniforms and meet him on the practice field next to the school gym. Luckily she already knew how the school was set up. When they got there, Aizawa-sensei told them about the quirk apprehension test. Momo was interested in that and thought about it in silence. The teacher probably wanted to see them, in action, to see how well they could control themselves and how fit they were. After a short speech, her teacher took out his phone and began to tap. Momo couldn't help but think about how rude he was after 10 seconds. Checking a text message during class. Not possible. What made you hired? Aizawa was angry and said, "God damn it. Why is it not working, stupid thing?" Momo and a lot of her classmates turned their heads to look at what they saw. Didn't that guy ever have a phone on him? "You know, Aizawa-san, you could just ask me to do something. There's no need to be rude," the device replied. Someone in her class asked, "What the heck?" While Momo was looking at the phone in the teacher's hand, she didn't pay attention to the bad language. She didn't hear it the last time she was in the US, when she was taking her special exam for chosen students. Was it a computer program or someone named Aizawa-sensei? A girl with brown hair asked, "Sensei, what was that voice?" The device said again, "Allow me to answer that, and Aizawa-san, please be so kind and stop blocking the camera feed from your shirt. I like to see my conversationalists." The teacher rested his arm against his body, and the device said, "Hello students of 1A. My name is Alan. Starting today you could consider me a helping program for the whole UA educational system. I'm pleased to meet you all and hope that we get along." Momo found that her jaw was dropping a little, which was how most of her classmates felt. Alan, that thing sounded just like a normal, flesh and blood person, and he was so smart. That technology was really cool. Holy crap. The UA has some kind of robot? That's so cool, said a boy with a black lightning bolt in his hair on the left side. Everyone's attention was on Momo when she said, "It's not a robot. It's artificial intelligence. A very developed one. Am I right, Alan?" "Yes, Yaoyorozu-san, you're indeed correct. My creator is the very same person that greatly improved the villain bots from the entrance exam, and it's thanks to him that Uraraka-san's Heath wasn't in any real danger from Zero Pointer. So it could see student files." "Wow, that guy must be really smart. That's so cool," a pink-skinned girl with horns said with a jump. Alan laughed at the comment, which was pleasantly not creepy. "My creator is a first-year student, just like you." That was cool. Momo was amazed and couldn't help it. Whoever that student was, they were very smart and skilled. When Aizawa-sensei cut off the last part of the conversation, it was time for the test. He gave the ball to the rude blonde and told her to throw it to show them the school motto. He was strong, so she had to give it to him. After her classmates cheered with joy at the chance to show off, their teacher told them that the students in last place would be kicked out of school. Momo saw through the lie right away. No way UA would let them do that on the first day. He had to agree with Aizawa-sensei, though, when he said that the world was a bad place. Mother thought she did pretty well on the test. She used her smarts and her quirky personality to make things that would help her score as high as possible. She also did well enough on the pure, physical part. She was also interested in her classmates and kept track of their quirks, grades, and overall performance. That will come in handy later on, and it will also help her make friends. No, she wasn't desperate to actually talk to people her age. Not at all. She saw that Alan talked to the class during the exercises, telling them nice things and encouraging them to do their best. She felt a little off when one of his compliments made her cheeks heat up. "Excuse me, it's not every day that a very advanced computer program tells her how smart she is." They were shown their scores by Aizawa-sensei. She was thrilled to win first place. Even if she wasn't as strong as some of her classmates, her quirk made her very useful and was enough to get her the spot. She learned the names of her classmates by looking at the scoreboard. The third place made her blink. Who was the angry blonde Pomeranian? The fuck? Who the fuck did this? That's her answer. Angry blonde Pomeranian turned out to be that annoyingly loud and rude boy with the explosion quirk. Momo agreed with the name that was shown, even though she had been raised well-behaved. He was furious, and his hands were making popping sounds. His quirk seemed to fit his personality pretty well. It could have been the other way around. Alan's voice said, "Why, I did it. I thought it was right for you." He made her think of him with a very happy grin. The Pomeranian screamed as it set off more explosions. "You want to fucking die, you stupid program?" Just wait until I find your unit. I'll blow you to fucking scraps. He could use help with controlling his anger, and Momo thought she could find a specialist for him. Alan laughed about the treat. Firecracker, I'd like to see you try, Momo said. Alan's tone of voice doesn't change very often, but that sounded like a personal thing. A lot about you. I think my time with you all is over. I look forward to our next meeting. Until then, have a nice day. Momo was glad that this program was so polite, and she hoped that the person who made it was at least as good as Alan in that area. Pomeranian was being watched by Aizawa-sensei, who looked at her with narrowed eyes. He then looked at another student and pointed at that one. You're expelled. All sounds stopped, and everyone looked at the boy, who looked shocked. He almost yelled, "What? But I came in 11th. Unlike Mineta, who gave his all, you simply took it at a leisure pace. You really think heroism is a game, don't you? I saw you during entrance exam. There you were at least trying. Get out of my class. Maybe the principal would be gracious enough to grant you a place in general ed." Aizawa-sensei replied in a serious, if not also angry way. Momo felt bad about it. She thought their strange teacher was lying to them to get them to do what he wanted. It did get some people going, but she really thought it was just a threat that wouldn't hurt her. Mineta got off his knees and cheered loudly as he did. She looked at him. Even though he looked at the girls without shame, she hated to say that he really did his best in all the exercises. Even though the lie had a little effect on her mood, she was looking forward to tomorrow. She was in the hero course and finally had a chance to prove to herself and everyone else that she wasn't just a rich girl with family power. She was thinking when there was a loud explosion and smoke coming from a building nearby. As Nezu looked at the screen, his smile grew bigger. Young Midoriya was right to suggest it, and he had to thank her for it. The extra storage units were well worth the money. Nezu was sure of it. His favorite thing to do right now was to drink a cup of tea and watch his student improve in ultra-high definition. All because of Alan and young Midoriya's little cameras. He gave them to all the teachers and did Alan a favor by doing this because the AI wished to know who he was talking to. Nezu laughed when he said it made him feel more human. He enjoyed yesterday's 1A quirk apprehension and was very happy with how it went. After class, he should thank Alan for all the support he gave the students, which made their job so much easier. To help students improve even more, all you have to do is watch the video and see what they are having trouble with. It could also be used for many other things. As an example. That was it. That sudden anger, hostility, and dislike. In other words, Alan did say that to Nezu. It was true that when he first heard that, he thought the kid was just really into it. But after seeing yesterday's video and the many others Alan gave him while asking for privacy, Nezu could see the problem very clearly. Changing young Bakugo's name to that rude, funny, and appropriate nickname was probably part of his plan to make his point. He was working on another endeavor, but he wasn't sure if it was a good idea. Flame Hero was great at fighting crime and looking into crimes, but that was the end of it. It was great to want to be the best, but if it meant destroying a lot of public property, was it really worth it? Alan, was this what you wanted to warn me about? Nezu asked, stroking his frozen image of Katsuki Bakugo with an angry animal face and fireworks dancing across his hands. Alan answered, yes, principal. A small green light showed that he was there. Nezu said with a frown, I see the problem. I'm sorry I ignored your concern earlier. No worries, principal. Better now than never. Nezu sat there for a while without saying anything. For now, young Bakugo would be closely watched. If the boy doesn't show any signs of getting better, the right steps will be taken. Aizawa had his eyes on him from the beginning. It was a good thing Alan called him, because it reminded him. Alan, why did you do it behind young Midoriya's back? Nezu asked him. He was interested in his answer. At first, the program didn't say anything, but the green light that showed he was on the computer stayed on. Although I am very grateful to Izuku for creating me, naming me and allowing me to have free will, I can see that he won't take any actions against that blonde menace himself. He still clings to that childish awe at Bakugo's power and drive, even when he doesn't see him as a friend anymore. I want to protect Izuku, and if it means doing things behind his back, so be it. That made Nezu nod. He sat back in his office chair and looked out the window while thinking about what had happened. Thank you for being honest. He would have to wait to fix it. Nezu would not help the boy if it meant letting young Midoriya's plans for the future come true. The boy deserved it. We need more tea and a lot of time to think of ideas. The way Izuku's hands and mind were working together was strange, but not a bad thing. It was really easy. He was having a hard time writing down all the numbers and words that were coming out of his head. That was a lot. It reminds him of a time when one of his creative projects literally smoked a piece of paper. He was in the US and could get to a lot more resources than he could before. That's how much he could live on from his job at the comic book and manga store and his allowances. Alan had to save up for almost a year just to get his job back up and running, and the AI he or she could only do simple things and have simple conversations. Alan became more self-aware and developed his own sense of who he was over the years. He also got better at doing harder and harder tasks, but not nearly as good as he is now. Making Alan connect to UA's servers helped him a lot. Alan could now get a lot more done at once and understand a lot more, and all of this was possible because he helped the school run its educational program. That deal was what he called it. Izuku had to do some new calculations and change some designs now that he could use UA's much longer list of materials. Of course, it's all for the better. "Midoriya, what are you doing?" asked a voice that was very loud. When Izuku stopped and looked up, he saw ectoplasm standing next to the whiteboard with a complex equation written on it and staring at him. Hold on, ectoplasm. Math was taught by ectoplasm. His class had a lesson with Present Mike when he had his creative strike. That was a while ago. It could have been too. But wait, lunch was coming up soon. After that, he had the best time of his life. 3 hours in the support department workshop at UA. He had a lot to do today. Oh, ectoplasm was staring at him, and he felt a little chill. He was mumbling again, right? Izuku went back to writing and said, 43 2/3. Ectoplasm coughed, and the sound it made was eerily like, correct. It was Nezu's job to let his math and physics teachers know that he could do whatever he wanted as long as he didn't talk. He showed Nezu that he was much better than anything they could give him in those tests, which were probably Nezu's logical ones. The little scary animal with fur loved them too much, in terms of danger. Izuku turned his head, half glaring at the shape of the person who gave him headaches yesterday and will probably give him headaches in the future. The girl with pink hair and amber eyes was working on a metal piece again. Her name was Mei Hatsume. For God to punish him so severely, he must have done something very wrong. First it was not having any quirks, which didn't bother him too much at the time. Then it was this pink hurricane of destruction. What will happen next? Getting frozen by a teen who has problems with their dad. Izuku really didn't know how to feel about her. It was more like she was ultra hyper. She was all over the place, didn't know what personal space meant, and took someone else's tool when she couldn't find it. To top it all off, she could make anything blow up. Anything, really. That was proven yesterday when the thing she was building blew up in the studio, even though it wasn't plugged in or connected to power. It was full of smoke and noise. The noise was still in Izuku's ears. But even though he didn't like her, he had to accept that she was talented. Even though Izuku knew how to use the machines they had before, he still couldn't keep up with her speed. Most of the kids in his class were just starting to put their inventions together. They spent most of yesterday making plans and getting used to the tools. Izuku was almost done. He only needed to screw some boards together, add power, and make a few other small adjustments. Hitaki, on the other hand, almost finished 2 inventions. The first one looked like an arm guard and was some kind of grapple gun. The other one is boots. He remembered how Power Loader had to almost kick her out of the lab. It looked like it had been hard for him. Izuku thought about it for a while and decided that he would do his best to become friends with her if the need arose. It's possible that they could share their thoughts and come up with a solution, but only if it's really important. Wow, that girl was crazy. One of her bombs would definitely be enough to send him flying. When the bell rang, Izuku began to pack his things. It was now lunchtime, and he could enjoy Lunch Rush's delicious food once more. Of course, his mom's katsudon will always be the best. No way, never. That was the last time Izuku looked at Hatsume. Her desk was empty, and her chair was lying on the floor. That was it. She could finally let go of her worries and just work, and work some more. The time was going by painfully slowly. There are so many plans, ideas, and babies to make. She was in heaven because she could get so many more kinds of raw materials. The days when she had to look through trash dumps are long gone. To get something she wanted, all she had to do was grab it from a storage room and set off sparks. It was great that a day had about 70 hours. She only had to go through those pointless, stupid lessons. Hi, her name is Mei Hatsume, and she wasn't able to just sit there and listen. That wasn't helpful at all, and she didn't get it. Why don't they just give them lab time all the time? At the very least to her. She was the only one who could make all those babies better than anyone else. Nobody. She was mad at her teacher. Can dock her power? Really load her? It doesn't matter, big guy with the weird helmet. They were so rude to kick her out and say it was over for the day. That was a terrible thing to say. He shouldn't be able to stop her from having babies. Then he wouldn't be able to do something so rude. She should just have a special baby. That's fine, thanks. What's the number of babies there? Okay, let's get back to making babies. Just a few more turns of her screwdriver. Did she own it? Yes. No? The one she picked up from the ground on her way back to her station with more supplies. Did it make a difference? Nope. There it is. Last but not least, she finished her super duper mega awesome hovering boots. Not fair, teacher. She could have done it yesterday and gone make another very cute baby. She looked at her new baby with the love that only a mother could give and then checked her work again. She found some screws that were not tight. That's not good enough. She was about to fix it when she felt a hand on her shoulder. Who dares? A man with a stern voice said, I think this is mine. She looked at the brave person who was standing in her way. He was bigger than she was and had freckles on his cheeks. His hair was black and green-ish. He was yelling at her hand, which had a screwdriver in it. She snarled at him, I found it on the floor. Why were people always getting in the way of her work? There must have been some kind of contest. It made her mad. Yeah, I put it there so I can reach it. Ah, that makes sense. I need it, plus mine went somewhere, she said. She really wanted this guy to leave. You mean that one? He asked as he took her screwdriver from the stack of metal sheets. That's where she left it. Can I have mine, please? I needed to complete my work. Mei didn't say anything, and they switched tools. For a split second, she stopped him from making a baby, and she felt a little bad about it. It didn't matter. She could now check out her new baby and move on to the next one. Scary asked, Are you going to check it out? Why did he stay? When she turned around, he was looking at her baby with interest in his eyes. Oh, so he wanted to see how great Mei Hatsume and her cute baby were. She smiled at the person who might like her work in the future. Why not put on a show for him? She was excited and asked, Yes, you want to see? He just gave a nod. She was about to pick them up and stand on them. Did you make sure it works? What's wrong with him getting in the way of all of her moves? As her patience ran out, she said, I'm just about to. He told her, crossing his arms over his chest and looking into her eyes, I meant dry test to just see if it turns on right. It's powered by accumulators, right? By crossing his arms over his chest. Did she figure it out? Yes. Once. It was enough just once. Yeah, in my head. He seemed pretty done when he said, Let me guess. You did it once. He blanched and gave her a nod. What? Wasn't enough once? Then he did something terrible. He took one boot, took off the back panel, and began to look at her work. That's not good enough. She would let him know she understood. She was about to show him how angry she was when he cut her off again. He looked at one of the wires and said, It's loose. She took his boot. It wasn't. That great Mei Hatsume would never miss something like that. The cable was not attached at all. It fell out halfway through her mess of wires just because she grabbed her cute baby. Then there were some more. What the heck was wrong? It's possible that her cute baby would not work at all or would break down in some other way. He spoke in a deadpan tone and smiled at her. You're welcome, Hatsume-san. She put it down on her counter and frowned deeply as she said, Thanks, I guess. How did she not see this? And then there was a rumbling sound. There might have been a storm coming. Freckles called out, Hatsume-san. To get her attention. Are you hungry? When was the last time you ate? He asked with a worried look on his face. Are you hungry yet? Was she hungry? She knew what it was like to be hungry. Now that she thought about it, that was a very likely reason for her stomach feeling strange. She was sure she had it before. She just ignored it because it kept getting in the way of her work. The same as being sleepy. Her babies were the most important thing to her. I don't know, maybe yesterday. Why do you ask? She asked as she fiddled with the other boot. Yes, this is the same case. Many cables are not tight. How did that really get through? Green let out a loud sigh and asked their teacher something. She would thank him later, though. It was only fair that she say thank you to him since he saved her cute baby. Then everything went wrong, and she found herself on the floor. She thought she was moving, but she knew she couldn't be. She didn't put her feet on the ground. Though it was just the back of his head, she saw Freckles when she turned around. He held her hand over her shoulder as he led her away from the workshop, where happy cheers rang out. "What are you doing?" she asked as she tried to get away from him. He had some good muscles. "Hold on, she has babies. Taking you to the cafeteria. Lunch rush is still around, so he can make you something to eat," he just said. "I don't wanna. I need to go back and make some more babies," Mei cried out. Why didn't they see how important her work was? He was confused and asked, "Babies? Oh, you man your inventions. That's cute, I guess. Even makes sense in some way." He laughed a bit. When Mei stopped fighting, she looked at him in shock. That's right. At last. Someone finally got it. Now she has to find a way to get him to go back to the lab so she can keep making babies. He told Hatsume-san in a harsh voice, "You need to eat." Could he understand what people were thinking? You don't work as well when you're hungry. She always did her best work. Making mistakes now and then was just part of her job. My mom always says that a hungry inventor is bad inventor. I found myself agreeing with that statement. With an empty stomach, our minds don't have the fuel necessary to work correctly, causing mistakes. Same case with sleep, although I think it's a bit cynical of me to say that. He laughed at that. She said he had a nice laugh. Well, that made sense, and she kind of agreed with him somewhere inside. A few hours of sleep and food had helped her remember that she was more productive afterward. Okay, so Green might have been right. The cafeteria was empty when they walked in. Freckles put her down on a bench and then went to get food. That was her chance. She could take a break and visit her cute baby. At the very least, she tried to lift her body. It felt heavy, like real tones were inside it. She begged her muscles to move, but they wouldn't. That feeling in her stomach got worse. What was going on? Green gave her a full tray of food and said, "There you go." It had a nice smell. She wasn't one to say no to free food, though. What the heck? This was really tasty. Why didn't anyone tell her? She took another bite and another, and as she ate, she almost choked on the tasty food. She might come by here once in a while. When she looked up at Freckles, his smile was so bright that she thought it was the sun. In between bites, she said, "Thanks, I guess." He smiled and said, "Just happy to help." Mei was charmed by his new, kinder smile. He seemed good. While they sat there, she chewed, which broke the silence. She should be happy with it. She wasn't, though. This guy was different from everyone else. Most of the time, people avoided her and looked at her funny. She was okay with it. She has more time for her kids. Freckles, on the other hand, seemed to understand her in her mind. It looked like that, at least. It looks like Mei has chosen to try something new. Make friends. At first, it was a little awkward, but then, she didn't remember when her food disappeared or how long they had been talking, laughing, and sharing ideas. It was really cool to find someone like you. Green was such a great business. Her mind added that he was strong. Muscles, a smart brain, and he got her right away. He did have a pretty plain look, but that didn't matter. He would be a great partner. Of course, her children would benefit from having a father. "Hey Hatsume-san, I'm not mad, but why do you keep calling me Freckles, Green, or Muscles?" he asked, lightly blushing as he scratched his temple. That was all she said. "I don't know your name." Simple as that. He looked at her blankly. His voice cut off. "You don't know?" She didn't say anything. We shake our heads again. What about our classmates, teachers? It was the third time, and the nerd with the big head and curly hair bought it. He laughed and smiled at her. "What was funny?" she said. He put out his hand. "Izuku Midoriya, pleased to meet you, Hatsume-san." She took his hand and held it. It was rough, but in a good way. It's plain. Your name, that is. So I've been told, he laughed, then let out a light sigh and said, we should go back. Mei agreed with him and stood next to him, ready to follow him. They walked back in peace and quiet. Mei thought about how to ask him if he would like to have babies with her sometimes. Oh, wait, all the time. That sounds so much better now. Should she say it? Or maybe she should get him to ask her to marry him. He smiled at her and said, hey, Hatsume-san. How about I finish my work and help you fix your hover boots? She asked. She liked it when problems were easy to solve. Mei jumped around and said, yeah, I'd like that, Izuku. She wasn't even trying to hold back her excitement. He yelled, Izuku? With his mouth open and face red. Mei cocked her head. Yeah, it's less plain than your surname and shorter. The less we need to call each other, the more time we have to work on babies together. She always had the right idea. Again, Izuku's face turned red. He laughed out loud and friendly while holding his stomach. That sound pleased her. So I guess I need to call you Mei in return, don't I? He asked with a smirk. She punched him in the arm lightly and laughed a little as she said, knew you would get it. As they walked along, they thought about how great it was that they had become friends. By the way, Mei, your hands are really soft and nice to touch. Why did her cheeks feel hot? Why? How? These two questions kept popping up in his head, switching places and blending together to give him the worst headache of his life. Powerloader, who was their homeroom teacher, dropped a bomb on them after the morning call of presents and some basic news. He only said, pick your class representatives. At that moment, almost everyone looked at him with a smile and, politely, asked him to be class president. Izuku had a hard time understanding what was going on. He was a geeky teen whose best friend was a computer program. What the hell is going on? He wasn't friendly at all. Okay, he was a bit bossy around the store when Stan wasn't there. And after Stan died, everyone called him boss, even though he said he'd only stop by every other day if he wasn't busy. When Izuku asked them why they did what they did, they gave him an answer that made him laugh. He seems to have tamed Mei Hatsume, also known as Explosive Hurricane. Someone also said he was very smart. They were wrong, but he didn't try to tame Mei. He became friends with her, despite what he had thought before. He took his time to get to know her through the long talk they had yesterday. That was all. They would fly if someone, probably him, didn't check on her inventions. She was still a very hyper girl. To prove their point that Mei would only listen to him, they called her and tried to get her attention, but they failed horribly. After that, he just said her name, ignoring the blank looks from his classmates. Because she was so interested in him, Mei stopped playing with her goggles and looked at him with puppy eyes. They asked her who she thought would make a great class president. She looked at him from his toes to his head, shrugged, and said that he was. Izuku wasn't sure if he should be pleased or angry with her. He didn't want to be the only one in pain, so he suggested Mei as his deputy, and everyone agreed right away. He went back to his seat, happy with how things were going. As soon as Powerloader told them they were free to do whatever they pleased for the rest of homeroom, he saw a message from Alan that took away his pride in his work. Message was, you do know that you'll have to do most of the work, genius. Alan is always helpful. Izuku went to the cafeteria for lunch. It was strange to see Mei, but she wasn't a bother. They grabbed their trays, loaded them up with tasty food, and found a small, empty table all to themselves. They didn't mind at all that the rest of their class went somewhere else. Izuku would often eat by himself, and Mei didn't seem to mind either. Weird, maybe they shared more than he thought. Shortly after that, they start a rambling conversation that makes perfect sense to them. She huffed and gave him a look that didn't mean anything bad, but really, why don't you get the superiority of a simple switch or button? Izuku calmly said, I'm not saying that they aren't useful. He loved her cute pouty face. But it's not always the best solution. How so? She asked, tilting her head and blinking. Her face showed that she had no idea what to say. He was surprised by how natural it sounded when he said, think about it. You want to make a super advanced, high-tech baby. Mei literally started drooling at the thought of it. And that baby would have a lot of features. You'd have to use a lot of buttons, switches, and wires to make it work. It's easier to just program it and use voice or gesture commands, he told her, not telling her that he was talking about his dream job as a superhero. While she looked around, Mei pursed her lips and crossed her arms. What were those lines in her eyes moving? Did her quirk have anything to do with it? He should wait to ask. She did sound like she was in a lot of pain when she said, "Well, I guess you're right." She slouched and said, "But I can't really do all that programming stuff." "Didn't you try to learn?" He found programming as natural as breathing. He learned how to do it right for most of his childhood. The reward for all his hard work. Alan. Izuku laughed as Mei whined loudly, "I've tried, but I get lost in it and it's so boring." He smiled at her and said, "Well, I think I'm pretty good at it, so if you want, I can teach you." Right away, Mei smiled and perked up. "Really? You would teach me?" "Of course, we're friends now." "Friends? Oh, that did sound good." "Thanks, Izuku." Mei jumped around in her seat like a little kid who just found out they're going to get a candy for doing nothing. Man, it must be really nice to have an intelligence quirk. Izuku opened his eyes. His worst fear came true at that very moment. Usually, someone would ask about your quirk before they asked for your name. He thought about all the terrible times when someone had asked him about it and his answer made them turn around and run away as fast as they could. He chose to just get it over with after sighting. Just like every other time, he would get by if Mei didn't want to do anything with him. This would hurt him deeply and make him very sad, making him pout for several days. He would handle it like a man, though. He saw Mei blink at him and say, "I don't have an intelligence quirk. In truth, I don't have one at all. I'm quirkless." He held out. He was ready for her to laugh at him, to get up and leave, to yell at everyone in the cafeteria and say that he doesn't have what almost everyone else does. "That's amazing." Mei yelled out of the blue, right next to him. She had a huge grin on her face and eyes that were bright with joy. Izuku agreed that she had beautiful eyes. "So all of those ideas just come to you without any help?" Izuku asked. He couldn't understand what was being said, so he just nodded. She sat back and said, "Wow." She still looked at him with a shocked face. "You're really awesome then, Izuku." Even though her voice was soft, it was very strong. He should not have thought this way about his friend. For God's sake, it was Mei. She only wanted to have fun while having babies. She was a very straightforward person, but that was also beautiful. His voice, "Hey, why are you crying?" brought him back to earth. Was he? His cheeks felt wet. Izuku wiped his tears away and sent her the happiest smile he could muster. "It's just, not many think about me like that. So, thank you, Mei." She smiled at him. No Cheshire Cat grin for her this time. Just a normal, simple smile from the heart. It looked great on her. An annoying alarm went off, bringing panic with it, before they could continue talking. The voice on the computer said something about a level 3 security breach, and he thought it might have meant trespassing. They tried to move out of the way of the frantic group of teens, but the current pushed them around and made it impossible for them to do what they wanted. All of a sudden, the crowd trying to get ahead pushed them apart. He kept going, slowly making progress in the general direction he saw her go. He stood on his toes to see better, and there you go. She had pink hair, and he then saw Mei herself, pressed up against a wall with her arms around her head. His brave heart beat faster, and a small amount of anger started to grow inside him. In order to get to his friend, he pushed past everyone else and finally got in front of her. He then stood with one arm against the wall and protected her with his body. He spoke out loud, "Don't worry, I'm here." It was worth all the elbows to the ribs and back that she gave him with a small smile of thanks. What the heck was going on? Since it was the US, they had to do some safety drills. He became angry with himself. What did he not do? He could, though. On the other hand, Alan could. If he could get his hand in his pocket. He wasn't able to move his arm because they were pushed up against other people. In desperate times, desperate steps must be taken. "Mei, I need you to reach toward my left pocket and put its content on my ear." "Why?" she yelled, but his shoulder blocked her sound. "No time. Do it now." She moved her arm and took the earpiece out of his pants. Because they were so close together, she couldn't reach his face, so he tilted his head as much as he could. Soon, he felt a felt that felt like plastic on his ear. "Alan, what is going on? There have been a security breach. Someone as uninvited is on the school grounds." That means he was right. While deeply frowning and getting hit again by someone's elbow, He quickly thought about what he could do. I need you to check every camera and tell me what is going on. We need to get it under control. At once, sir. There are only about 700 of them. No time for sass. Really? What went wrong with his beloved AI? I've got the issue. It's the reporters from this morning. Somehow they got in the premises. Those birds of prey. Izuku saw them when he tried to get into school. They were blocking the main entrance like a pack of wolves. It was all they wanted to know about All Might teaching here. They didn't pay attention when he told them he was from support, which was fine with him. But now, they broke a lot of laws, didn't they? Alan, tell them that over the school's sound system. Let's hope that calms them down. He wasn't in the mood to insult right away, but pardon him. He could feel his ribs getting hurt. Everyone stopped flailing as soon as Alan's voice came over the intercom, and the evacuation went smoothly, as it should have from the start. Are you okay, Mei? He asked, afraid that she had hurt herself during the whole thing. She took a slow breath and said, yeah, I'm good now. Then gave him a mean look that made him nervous. What was that back there? And what is the deal with that earpiece? Izuku took a quick blink and laughed. Well, it was only natural for Mei to make them feel bad about almost being crushed to death just to learn about an invention. Well, remember that computer voice that we hear sometimes in class? His memory made him laugh as he watched his class go crazy with questions and geek out. Izuku smiled and gave Mei his earpiece as she nodded. Well, let's just say I'm a very proud father. God, thank you for giving him such a great memory. Now he would always remember the look of shock on her face. He got a hug, and she yelled, I knew you were awesome. Even though she was small, he had to admit that she was strong. His response to the hug was, you're pretty awesome yourself, Mei. Come on, we need to get to the evacuation side for the head count. A few hours later, he found out that a pretty girl and her goodies were pressed against him, turning him into a human tomato. Nezu gave the, now turn to scrap, a serious frown. A wall. He didn't want the students to see this, so he sent them out through different doors. He looked more closely at the metal pieces that were lying on the ground. Some of them were still together, but most of them looked like they had broken down and become dust. He looked to his sides and saw that Aizawa and Majima were also unhappy with how things were going. All of those surprise guests have already been checked. Their quirks were all different and not strong enough to do this much damage. This means that a third party is the only other possible conclusion. That particular thought made Nezu very upset. All of that made it look like some kind of war declaration. The only question was who did it. Nezu pulled his phone out of his pocket. Alan, do you have any security footage showing someone other than reporters entering school grounds? 1 second, Principal, I'm afraid not. There is no camera observing the other side of the school gate. So there are no leads. Nezu's frown got much worse. Although sensors picked up someone blinking into existence near the teacher's lounge. That was something useful. The thought of Nezu was voiced by Aizawa. Did you say, blinking? Yes. They seemed to appear out of nowhere and a minute later they disappeared. Unfortunately, no camera caught who it was and there is none of them in the room itself. Nezu quickly said, thank you, Alan. He had a lot of unsettling thoughts going through his mind. It looks like their enemy had a warping quirk, which was very rare, even less common than healing ones. He would have to come up with countermeasures. He hoped he'd get them in time. There was a problem. He knew they were missing something when the teachers told them to use side entrances to leave school. So, after taking Mei to the train station and coming home, he sat in his office chair and stared at the wall for hours. He thought that he would have to use the so-called Big Brother after coming up empty-handed. Alan, are you there? Izuku asked as he turned to look at his monitor, which lit up right away. If I say no, would you finally go to sleep, sir? It's close to midnight now. He laughed a little and said, you know the answer is no. Izuku could picture him saying, there go my hopes and dreams. What do you need me for, sir? He cut to the chase and asked, what happened at the main entrance today? He had to satisfy his interest. Reporters broke in. Izuku rolled his eyes and said, that I know, but how? Alan didn't try to sell him anything, like that I could just open up his whole thought process. He wouldn't do it, and AI knew it. Even though Alan is a program he wrote, it was an invasion of his privacy. To him, Alan is a person. Besides that, he passed the test. You do realize, sir, that you want me to reveal information that only teachers and police have access to. Yup. After a short pause, they both looked at Alan as he downloaded a few files. The sassy AI said, "And I thought you wanted to be a hero," said, which made him laugh. Alan brought him a video of the well-known UA. The barrier was falling apart and some of it was turning into dust. A flood of reporters came in and ran toward the school like a pack of animals. He is not going to ever like media in any way. Izuku stopped watching news channels a long time ago because they only told people a small amount of the truth. Alan then showed him the building map and school detector log and told him what was going on. The person who did that waited until lunch, when most of the hallways would be empty, and used reporters to get teachers out of their lounges. So, Izuku said, tapping his desk. Correct, sir. Are you perhaps Sherlock Holmes in disguise? It didn't make him laugh that Alan made the comparison. Are there any street cameras that show UA entrance? Why do you ask, sir? AI asked with doubt. Because if there are any, I want you to break into the city cameras system and find the feeds, Izuku said firmly. He wanted to keep his school and his friends safe from all harm. That's what a hero would do. The cheeky program replied, I didn't know that we switched from business to villainy, sir. Izuku laughed in a mean way. Are there any, or no? Unfortunately, sir, there's none. The two closest ones are at the junctions, which is quite far away from the gate. He looked up a little and waved to Alan to let him know he was done for now. He fell asleep after hiding under his duvet and finding a comfortable position. Getting as much energy as possible was important because tomorrow was going to be very busy. And it was crazy. Some seniors from the hero course were walking around the school and keeping a close eye out for any signs of trouble. It seemed like something was going to hit teachers at any time because they were always counting heads and looking behind them. He didn't blame them, either, because he felt the same strange kind of fear that kept him on high alert. He told Power Loader that he might be a little late for lab. Going to visit our beloved psychopath, he said when asked what he was doing. Power Loader laughed it off. When he told Mei that he wasn't going to stay for lunch but would only be there for a quick bite, she was excited and said she was going to start making babies right away. Even though she didn't want to, she swore that she would eat something later. He was sure that she would kill him. He went in the direction of the main office. He thought about everything he wanted to say and knew it would take longer than a short chat, but it was important. He had to begin somewhere if he wanted to become a hero. It seemed like a good idea to help his principal improve the school's defenses. Huge double doors at the end of the hallway that blocked the outside world from Nezu's office opened, and a walking skeleton. Izuku thought that a breeze would knock this man over because he looked so sad and thin. Shoulders slouched forward, blonde hair a mess, and eyes set deep into the head. Also, why did he wear a suit that was at least 4 times his size? The man coughed and put his hand to his mouth all of a sudden. The sound was wet and like someone was ripping his lungs out of his body. Izuku walked faster, put his arm around the man's shoulder, and began massaging his back in circles. It worked for him every time, so maybe it will work here too. It looked like it was working after a short time. The man's breathing went back to normal, and when he took off his glove, Izuku could see red spots on it. Right away, he took out his small pack of tissues and gave one to the man. The man looked grateful, if a little surprised. Thank you, young man. Then Izuku's mind stopped suddenly, and 1,000 red flags started to appear every second. He knew it, even though his voice was rough. After a quick restart, he did a quick checkup. Really tall? Check. Suit big enough to hold a mountain of muscles? Check. Have blonde hair with 2 front bangs? Check. Electric blue eyes? Check. A voice that sounds very familiar calling him? Young man? Check and check. Even though he was mumbling at Mach 1, it didn't matter. In shock, he could only ask for proof. All Might? The man yelled, "Where?" and began looking around nervously. Yes, that proved what he thought. He could only move forward by putting his arms across his chest and making his eyes more intense. I'm not going to be fooled by such a simple trick. All Might. Besides, I can ask Alan to do voice comparison. He wasn't trying to be so rude, it just happened that way. All Might saw that they had lost and frowned deeply. He stared at Izuku nervously while he waited, and waited, and waited. He finally asked, "Don't you have any questions?" Izuku gave a puzzled look. Questions? Oh, believe me, I do have a ton of them, and most likely after you answer them, I'll have some more, but right now I'm too busy, so maybe someday later, he said, just scratching his cheek. All Might looked at him with wide eyes and a shocked look on his face. Why aren't you like, I don't know, freaking up or something? Izuku looked around and put his hand on his hips. There was too much on his mind at the moment. I'll freak out at some awful hour of the night, when I have time, he said. He meant it. All Might looked at him one more time before he laughed. He said with a soft smile, you are really something else, young Midoriya. It wasn't a surprise that he was serious when he said, please keep it to yourself. It's important to me. I know. I'm not the kind of teenager to gossip. Besides, you're my third favorite hero. Izuku gave a little smile. I have to go. See you later, all. No, wait, I shouldn't call you that. Izuku frowned as he thought of the right way to address the symbol of peace. Yagi-san said, my name is Toshinori Yagi, my boy. Thanks. See you later, Yagi-san. Izuku went into the principal's office through the big door. From his last visit, it looked like nothing had changed. Large, fluffy red carpet on the floor, and dark wood furniture, most of which are bookcases full of books and folders. That big desk in the middle was Nezu's, and it was filled with huge stacks of neatly arranged papers. Behind it was a big UA brand. Nezu said, oh, young Midoriya, what a nice surprise, from the armchair in his conversation area. By the windows. She smiled and said, come sit down on the couch. The tea is still warm, so maybe you'd like some. Izuku smiled back and said, yes. He couldn't picture having a long conversation with Nezu without the fresh tea. He took his hot cup and sipped a little of the warm drink while sitting on the couch and again being amazed at how comfortable the piece of furniture felt. He also had a vague thought about whether Nezu was dealing with All Might with that young prefix or if it was the other way around. Giving the principal a smile, he said, as good as always. At that moment, there was silence between them both. Izuku used it to organize his thoughts and try to guess how the conversation would go. He didn't know how to begin. So, why'd I owe the pleasure of hosting a brilliant boy in my chambers? Izuku thought that was a good way to start a conversation. He knew Nezu liked to play games with words. They were fun for Izuku too, but today he wanted to get right to the point. He sighed loudly while standing the same way Nezu did, with his hands folded neatly on his lap. He looked right into Nezu's eyes as he said, I'll cut to the chase and get to the point of this visit. Alan told me exactly what happened yesterday. His face went from a small smile to a smirk and back again, but his eyes were full of excitement and mischief. My, young Midoriya, I never thought you would even think about doing something that could get you kicked out of school, he said with a small laugh. Izuku's lips moved a little. I'm a future hero. You cannot expect me to sit quietly and do nothing. It was okay for Nezu to let out a short laugh. What is the point of your visit then, if you already possess the information? I want to give you ideas that will make the school safer, he said with a smirk. Consider it a help from a beloved student, good friend, or business partner. Choose a more suiting one. Nezu's lips got even bigger, and he shook in his seat. He shook his small ears when he said, I'm all ears. Izuku drank his tea and then went on. For starters, digitize all information about students, teachers, school schedules, and other important documents. To protect them even further, create a special server for them, that's going to be completely separated from school network, and only accessible through Alan. Don't worry, he's too advanced to be hacked by someone who doesn't know how he operates. Izuku saw Nezu nod, a happy look on his look. Next step is to increase the number of cameras, especially ones looking at the gates. In school, there's still some blind spots that could be covered. Alan already marked them on the building plan and delivered them to you for inspection. He paused, so far so good. And finally, a countermeasure for the warp quirk user. The main character shifted a little at that point. As it was documented, all warp quirks leave the trace of their energy behind whenever the portal is opened. I believe that I mean Hatsume-san, can build a device that would be able to track that energy and alarm us before a portal is fully open. Of course, we need to get a good read on it to ensure it works as desired, but it's doable. He took another sip, apologizing in his head for Mei's slip. Also, I believe it would be wise to reschedule UA Sport Festival, and to further improve security. We don't want a villain attack on such an important day. Nezu looked at him for a moment or two, then smiled big and clapped his paws. I'm impressed, young Midoriya. To think that it took you only half a day to come up with those solutions, maybe even less. Oh, and don't worry about the way you called young Hatsume. Powerloader already informed me about your friendship, and partnership in the called baby making. The principal laughed at the end. Izuku was sure. Nezu laughed a lot the first time he heard that word. It's nothing really. I'm just doing the natural thing, and using my abilities to protect this school. With a kind smile, Principal said, and for that I'm grateful. You'll be a great hero one day, young Midoriya. When could that device be done? Izuku took up his way of thinking. I could most likely get a design ready for it today, and we could start building it during Saturday's open lab hours. If you could allow us to have it accessible on Sunday, then at the beginning of the week it's going to be most likely ready to use. Consider it done. As they drank their tea, they were both quiet. Izuku was pleased with how things went together. He was even a little proud of himself. Does that describe how heroes feel when they can help other people? He might get used to it quickly. Nezu asked with a smile, is that all? Do you have something else that involves breaking the law? Izuku was sure that he would never live that one through again. Actually yes. But it's more of personal request. You see, I'm having a bit of trouble with getting one material. I've placed my request for it, but its arrival is still far away, and it's going to be a major setback in my work. Nezu asked in a happy voice, oh, is it for that project? Yes. The principal asked, I think you remember your deal about it, right? Izuku just nodded. Am I right to think that you want me to do something to get it shipped faster? Another nod. This time with more shame. I see. Unfortunately, it's Powerloader who holds more power in that department, and if he can't get it earlier, that surely I don't have better chances. That made Izuku frown. He really wanted to get started on it right away. Almost everything was ready, and Mei even helped him add school supplies to make them better. She even told him a few things he could do better. But don't worry, young Midoriya. I think I know how to solve your problem, Nezu said with a big smile. Momo sat there until her class was empty. She needed to talk to Aizawa-sensei about the specifics of her new job as class president, but she didn't have time yesterday because the students got out early. She gladly took that job when it was offered to her. She was also happy that she was able to persuade her classmates to make Usui-san her deputy when she was tied with Iida-san. Even though she didn't dislike him and admired his drive, she didn't think he was right for that role. He seemed to care too much about everything. She liked the frog girl better because she was more calm. She also couldn't hide how happy she was when Mineta lost the election. She was afraid of what would happen to her and other girls if the little bad student got power. It's not likely to happen anytime soon. She was the last of her classmates to leave, and she saw Aizawa-sensei getting close to the door. That was her chance. The teacher opened the door and looked down for a moment. Like always, Aizawa-sensei spoke in a tired voice. Oh, genius boy. What do you want? Mama had heard the phrase, genius boy, before. Midnight Sensei and Mike Sensei both said it a few times to thank Alan for something. It looks like that was how they talked about the person who made the AI. The thought of Midnight Sensei telling her how much she loved playing with the poor boy made her shiver. In that case, it would be an assault, right? Eraserhead. Oh, so you're 1A's homeroom teacher? Hope you're not too hard on them. Genius boy replied. It looks like Momo knew that voice. It's something she's heard many times, so she can't have mixed it up with someone else's. When she walked up to Aizawa-sensei, she saw the familiar bush of green hair with black roots, bright green eyes, and a friendly smile. She caught him off guard by asking, Midoriya-san? He smiled and said, Yaoyorozu-san, it's nice to see you again. This is what he always did when they saw each other. And she smiled and said, it's nice to see you too. I don't have time, so say what you need or leave. I need to be on time for my nap, Aizawa-sensei said, and the tone of his voice made it clear that he was angry. Midoriya-san said, actually, I was looking for Yaoyorozu-san. Momo raised an eyebrow at that. She was starting to think of questions. She knew why she stayed behind when she saw her teacher leave the room. The word, sensei, made Aizawa-sensei look at her with a clearly annoyed face. It's not her fault that he wasn't getting enough sleep. About my duties as a class president. His quick answer, go to the representative's lounge near the teacher's room. There you'll find everything you need, sent her on her way to find where he had left his sleeping bag. Momo looked at that. She knew where to go at least now. She turned to look at Midoriya-san and saw that he was waiting for her to finish what she was doing. That was her answer to the question of why Alan was being so good. Sorry for that, Midoriya-san. You said, you were looking for me, right? It didn't happen, so don't worry about it. Also, I need your help with something, and the principal told me you were the best person to do it. He looked into her eyes and scratched his cheek. If Momo's memory serves her right, that was his way of showing he was scared. That depends on what you need, but of course if it's within my abilities, I'd be happy to do it. As usual, very polite. How about I show you? It's in the support workshop. Of course if you have time, I don't want to be a bother, he said nervously. Momo gave the little boy a friendly smile. He always thought about other people's well-being, which said a lot about him. I'm free now, so I'll gladly go there with you. Midoriya-san got excited when she spoke, and the two of them walked toward the support department building. Even though the silence was nice, she thought they should talk for a while. It had been a while since she saw him. Momo did notice that he looked a little taller. She really didn't know what else to say. I didn't know you were interested in engineering, but it's not a surprise since you were the one who programmed Alan. That made Midoriya-san laugh quietly, and he turned his head to look at her. Well, I've never mentioned it before. And let me guess, the genius boy comment was that gave that away. Momo just smiled. But being an inventor is not my end goal. How is a hero course treating our store #1 romance manga buyer? He asked with a small smile. That silly name made her laugh. The only place she went to buy new chapters of her favorite manga was the store where Midoriya-san worked. That's how they met. So far, so good. It's hard and will get harder over time, but I think the teachers know what they're doing with us, she thought again after a moment. May I ask? She asked, and his nod was an answer. She was really interested in what you meant when you said that inventing wasn't your end goal. When Momo saw how shocked he looked, he tapped his chin with his finger and looked away. Even though his lips moved, he didn't make a sound. He looked like he was thinking a lot. He sneaked a look at her every once in a while. Momo gave him time, and with each passing second, she became more interested. He finally saw her and looked at her with a confused face. Can I trust you? It was a simple question, but Momo knew that tone of voice because she heard it every day in her head. Midoriya-san had doubts about himself. That was strange, because he always seemed pretty sure of himself. So it looks like she found something by accident that might be off limits to him. Could he believe her? Momo liked to think that people could trust her. He could trust her. Anything he said would stay between them, and she would help him if she could. As a student, she learned how to be a hero, and she will now have to help people in trouble almost every day. She gave him a nod and a smile to cheer him up. He took a deep breath to calm down and said, okay. Okay. Something that doesn't happen very often, but still surprises me. I'm quirkless. Being a hero was all I ever wanted, she said. Was that what people meant by dropping a bomb? My life wasn't the easiest. Almost everyone made fun of me because of my birth defect, and my dream that didn't seem possible. He sounded angry, but Momo knew where he was coming from. But I'm going to win, no matter what anyone says. I'm going to make this happen. I'm becoming a hero, and this is the end. His determination was truly inspiring. He sounded a bit like All Might there. He replied, I see. Then I wish you luck, Midoriya-san. She felt happy about the idea of having him in her class. Am I correct to assume that you'll try to transfer to the hero course then? That made Midoriya-san laugh and shake his head. No, I'm staying in support. I still want to have my inventor license, and open a company. I intend to produce equipment not only for heroes, but also for everyone else. He smiled a bit. She had to know the answer to that question because it kept going through her mind. That's very kind of you. But how are you planning to become a hero then? She thought it was possible because Aizawa-sensei and Midnight-sensei seemed to be the ones who were having problems. Midoriya-san smiled at her, making her feel like Aizawa-sensei was really excited. Do you know what SNHQT is? In shock, she didn't try to hide the fact that she was about to choke on air. That was the path he chose? Test to become a standardized national hero? She asked in a weak voice. That can't be right, can it? Oh my god, he said. His eyes were sharp and his smile looked bright like always. The standardized national hero qualification test was a special test for high school students who didn't take a hero class but still wanted to be heroes. Checking to see if a hero who was facing serious charges or had been away for a long time could still do his job was another reason for the test. Her uncle works for the government and once told her that he might see one. It was brutal, and he ended the conversation with a terrible look on his face. She asked, "You do know that it's 1,000 times easier if you switch to the hero course, right?" She knew that might sound rude, but this was a different case. But he said, "Well, I want to show people and myself that I have what it takes to be a hero." His face softened, and his lips formed a small smile. "Besides, it's just another mountain for me to conquer. Nothing new in my life." Momo just looked at him for a moment before she smiled big. He really made her heart melt. "Thank you for sharing that with me, Midoriya-san. I believe that you can turn your desires into reality, and I'll gladly help you with it." To make her smile, Midoriya-san turned toward her and gave her a small sun. His eyes were filled with thanks. "Thank you, Yaoyorozu-san. This means a lot to me. Besides, you're about to help me." He stopped her before she could ask what he meant. She scrunched up her brow and turned her head. Midoriya-san stood next to the wall and moved slowly toward the big metal door. His hand was then raised, and he hit 3 times quickly. He then quickly moved away, shielding his head. A rough voice from inside said, "It's safe, she went to get lunch." Midoriya-san calmed down. He laughed and said, "We have someone who is quite an explosive person." As soon as they walked in, she could smell oil, metal, plastic, and some chemicals. The room was big, and each student was working hard at their desk, occasionally looking at her with interest. Powerloader sat behind his desk and looked at his computer. They went to the back of the room, where she saw Midoriya-san's office. A side table with wheels has tools neatly arranged on it. On the main table is a broken-down device, and on one side are chunks of different metals. The other 3 monitors showed different programs that showed data and designs. It was all surrounded by a black machine that looked like a rectangular box and had a white, glassy surface. Supporting beams came out of its corners and held what Momo thought were 2 projectors facing the device's surface. As Midoriya-san walked toward it, she followed, interested in what the machine was for. He put on a black earpiece himself and gave it to her. She put it on. Alan was polite and said, "Hello, Yaoyorozu-san." Yes, Midoriya-san created AI, so it would be strange if he couldn't talk to him. "Hello to you too, Alan." He said, "I see that my oh-so-great creator chose to include you in his project," which was a bit snarky but not at her. "Hey, it was the principal who suggested it," Midoriya-san said in defense, pouting a little. "Sir, it was you who chose to go with it," Alan replied. Both of them kept joking around with each other, which made Momo laugh. "Did your friends or siblings act that way?" The argument was stopped when Midoriya-san said, "Anyway, Alan, show us the arc reactor." She raised an eyebrow when she heard the name of his project. The black machine soon made a soft sound, which shocked her. The device came to life and showed her a green 3D picture of different parts lying on his workbench. The parts quickly came together to make a single picture. It gave her some kind of cylinder-shaped thing. Being proud, Midoriya-san said, "This is an arc reactor. It's supposed to generate a great amount of power. I won't go into details now. Trust me, it would take a while to say how it functions." Momo said yes, it looked pretty hard. "I see, but I don't understand where my assistance is required." When Midoriya-san touched the picture again, it broke up into pieces. When he took one, it turned orange and made the whole structure stand out. "This is a palladium core. The arc reactor won't work without it," he said with a frown and his arms crossed over his chest. "The problem is that the school doesn't have any, and my requested shipment is at least a week away. But I need to build one as soon as possible. Without it, I'm going to have to hatch a new plan on how to become a hero." That thing was very important back then. She said she would help him, though. "So am I correct to assume that you want me to use creation to make some of this palladium, right?" The man asked. "Creation?" She didn't tell him, did she? "Yes, that's the name of my quirk. It allows me make any non-living matter as long as I understand its atomic structure, by using my lipid cells as a fuel, she told him. The noise of the storm then reached her ears. Midoriya-san was in a pose for thinking, and her lips were moving faster than she had ever seen them move. He looked at her with eyes that were filled with awe and excitement. Momo didn't know if she liked the sudden attention or not. He's so lucky that I can understand and record all he's saying, Alan told me. The AI told Momo everything she thought. Midoriya-san stopped all of a sudden, his face red and a nervous laugh coming out of his throat. He rubbed his cheek. He said, "Sorry, I'm a bit of a quirk enthusiast." Without missing a beat, she replied, "No problem. I find myself interested in them as well." Back to the subject. "Could I kindly ask you to do it, Yaoyorozu-san?" he asked a little pleadingly. She replied with a yes, giving him a big smile that quickly turned into a small frown. "I need to warn you, though. The isotope I need is a little radioactive." His voice was filled with worry. The Momo blinked. She had dealt with that before. She made some uranium in a controlled setting one time. "Don't worry. At worst I would get a mild rash, but that depends from the amount, and its potency. But I should be fine." That made him look naked. It was very detailed information that Midoriya-san asked Alan to give her about palladium. She started by making a container for the stuff. This made Midoriya-san mutter again like the true quirk fan he was. Then she made palladium in the shape he asked for, giving him twice as much as he needed. It would be too mild to say that he was grateful. Then they said goodbye, and Momo walked toward the school exit. There was no one else in the building except for a girl with pink dreadlocks who ran by her. She gave what she heard some thought and did something for Midoriya-san. She liked him, and every time she went to the comic book store, he had something interesting to say. For some reason, she felt strangely drawn to him after today. He was determined and driven, and she remembered seeing him help her, other customers, and employees around the shop. He had a huge smile on his face all the time. She finally got it. It was all part of his heroic spirit coming out. She promised herself that she would help him. There was nothing she wouldn't do to make sure he won. Before she left a building in the support department, she heard a loud explosion. Immediately after, she heard Midoriya-san screaming, "Mei."
So this was it for today. I will continue this story in next part. Till then, bye bye.